Great. Well, I'll start then. The making of a wild man. So I want to start at the beginning with just thanking you guys. This is one of my heroes, Neville on the right. Neville Barnes. He's a mentor, guy. He trains people, evangelists, to live a life of evangelism. And this is the little motto he has here. So he helps people to see and be seen, to hear and be heard, and to lean in and add value. And so listening to your guys' stories and testimonies, I'm super blessed from what I've heard and seen, and the chance. I wish we had more time to, add value and speak into that of how we heard the Lord at work in your lives. He tries and coaches people how to do that, and I could sit around the room and go, it was amazing hearing the Kanzuki stuff, and God working in the Tetris, and in the midst of brokenness, in the midst of incredible challenges and stuff. It's incredibly humbling to be part of this team and to hear some of your stories, being stabbed and going through hardships and things like that. It's an honour to be part of this team, so I just wanted to say that from the beginning. And share my hero, Neville. He's a guy who, like I say, he's walked with me for a while. These are Germans there. He mentors a load of Germans in the German church. And yeah, he's one of my many heroes. And as I thought about this, I really thought about the people who've really walked with me through life. But we're going to start at the beginning. Baby Ben. So this is me planting. Anne said we plant. Yeah, I did plant trees. So there you go. I found that photo. I was like, I've got to put it in. Planting trees. Yeah. Anyway, so there's some more baby pictures of me. So yeah, growing up as a young person, my heritage. See that? Still wearing the mighty Newcastle United represented. So yeah, so that's my brother in the top left. These are various strips, Newcastle United. So yeah, I've always, for me, it's been sport and faith have been two huge things. And I love how we get to combine that with sports friends. But yeah, that's me a few years ago, wearing the 1996 top there. But always loved sport, and my heritage being Newcastle as well, but always had this faith thing as well. So I love how we do that with sports friends, but that's me there. There's a page boy in the pulpit, and there's me in the John Wesley's pulpit there. He used to preach from that. I'm not actually, I'm just visiting his museum there. I'm not actually doing it. That's why it looks a bit, They just call me like that, I don't normally speak like that, so yeah. And then then this one at the bottom is at my sending church there in Newcastle. Yeah, a little bit different from the one at the top as well. But yeah, sport and faith, always been a huge thing. Sorry about the picture quality. But that's where I'm from. Heritage is Newcastle upon Tyne at the top up there. And like all us British have shared, we feel quite strong about, where we're from, the northeast of England. But my heroes as I was growing up, without a doubt, are my mum and dad. There's me as a baby. That's my dad there. And planning for this and preparing for this, I just can't thank them enough. Thank you for pouring your life into me, giving me the opportunities that I've had. That's them very young over there. And my dad was a PE teacher for 35 years in the same school. He's retired now. So PE teacher, so I've got the sport, the coaching. And I put this on for the Nigeria guys. He coached Shola Amiobi when he was in secondary school. He was his PE coach, one of Nigeria's finest strikers. So they used to call him the Mackham Slayer, because he used to always score against our rivals. So they were called the Mackhams, and he used to always score. So I like to say my dad helped produce the Mackham Slayer. So yeah.
Brian's like, is he speaking English?
Yeah, you get the gist.
You're doing a good job translating.
That's it. Subtitles. Yeah. My mum is a nurse. She still is a nurse. She's called Teresa, and she's like Mother Teresa. She just cares for everyone. She started she's from a bit of a working class family. Dad more middle class, but my mum has just cared from day one and just goes the extra mile for everyone. She's through my dad has worked her way up. She worked her way to be she works in a doctor's surgery now. She's done everything for on wards. She's been in community, and she was unbelievably the lead nurse on a doctor's board. And that was because my dad, I know, really helped her get to elevate and to believe in herself, that she could actually go into a position influencing loads of people. And I see they do that. My mum's my biggest cheerleader. Growing up, mum she'd encourage me, anything, you can do anything. Everyone says your mum just literally, you say you want to do something, your mum, you can do it. I'm right behind you. And they just give me the resources and their time. And yeah, both of them, my education, my dad is obviously a teacher, was a teacher. and care so much about education. And those two things are like huge for me, like education, teaching, the PE thing, and caring as well. A Scottish missionary from Malawi met my parents, and she said, "Oh, it all makes sense now when I meet them, because my mum is so bubbly, wants to speak to everyone. My dad's a little bit more calm and likes to ask people questions and understand them, things like that." And they said, "Oh, makes sense now." So I'm definitely a product of my parents. They're like absolute heroes. But I grew up in Newcastle. When I was born in a one of the roughest estates in Newcastle. So my parents deliberately moved to a church plant in a place called Long Benton, which was like notoriously a bit rough. So my early memories were like, I wanted to go to a park, but there was no grass. So I wanted to play sports. I couldn't eat. There was no grass. There was glass on the ground. And I remember like our TV got stolen, a house got broken into, and things like that. And I remember just being like, wow, this is the friends I was with. My parents were like, just be careful of that kid, you know. And that kid, he ended up in the future, you know, he's in prison and things like that. And the neighborhood was a tough neighborhood, but I'm so grateful because like for me growing up in that environment, like they helped like mentor me in that place. But yeah, I got to know like how to live amongst like this really tough, deprived area. But it was also the same time as the Toronto blessing. I don't know if you know about like the big kind of Holy Spirit outpouring kind of thing. And I remember in church, we were in a Pentecostal church, and I remember just like crazy things were like happening in church as a young person. And they used to do these meetings to go to buildings, and like the Holy Spirit was being poured out. And I've always had this thing of like this Pentecostal root thing. When I went to like a conservative Bible college later, they were like, "You're the Pentecostal." And I'm just like, okay, then you're charismatic in a conservative place. But I always do look back to this root. It was a Pentecostal church in the midst of a difficult area. And that was where I grew up. I was also massively influenced by this lady here. This lady is my dad's mum. So both my grandparents were hugely significant. So on my mum's side, I had like a really fiery evangelist. So she would like tell everyone about Jesus. And she died when I was like 6. So that was quite a big thing for my mum's family, because she was like the centre of the family, and a lot of them like kind of walked away from the faith after she died. But this my dad's mum, and completely different. So this grandparent, like she lived her faith quietly, much like the Queen. She was so faithful. She would keep the keys of the church. She would just be living opposite the church. She knew everyone in the church. She would spend like Sunday night ringing people on the phone for like 2 hours. She connected us like the family around the world. She would always make sure she had time for people, and she silently lived out of faith. She, like my other grandma, was like in your face telling people about Jesus, and she lived it out. And it was words and actions, like two different people, but she treated everyone the same. She's got like 3 daughter-in-laws who were so different and was so equal with everyone. Like the way she lived out of faith was incredible. And so she's a huge hero of mine, definitely. As is my other grandma for different reasons, even though I didn't really know her.
You presented her with
but then, so growing up, just, loved sport. And like I say, was in that church. And then when I was 13 years old, I went to Youth for Christ football tournament as part of the youth group. And at this tournament, I played and I lost in the final. My team lost, and there was a little children's playground. And I went over and like kicked it because I was so annoyed we lost. This guy came over and he said, like, "What are you doing there? It's wrong. You should not have done that. You need to learn to manage your emotions." And then like 20-30 minutes later, the same guy stood up on the stage and after like a street dance performance preached the gospel. And he said, "Jesus died for everything that you've done wrong." And I couldn't look at the guy. I was like still felt bad about kicking the thing. But it wasn't just that. He spoke it in a language that I understood. He talked about it in a sports language. Like I'm part of the youth group. But it was through, sports metaphors, sports things. And it wasn't just the thing I got convicted with the play area. It was everything I ever did. And that was the point where I went forward. And there was a guy in my church at the time who was like a triple jumper, a big sportsman. And he was a strong Christian believer. So I kind of connected this, went forward, gave my life to Christ, accepted him as Saviour. And then these people would help us live and grow in that as well. So sports, that's why I'm so, passionate about being with sports friends, because that's literally what we do to do that. But then as I kept going, got into sport, I actually played basketball. So from the age of under 12 to under 18, or U12 to U18, make it a bit American. I played for Newcastle Eagles, so they're the most successful British basketball team, but it's terrible, the league. So. Yeah, I know.
Is that your number 13?
It is, yeah. I was actually number 4, but I don't know what this was. Yeah, but yeah, I had a choice. Like I always played football, soccer. So I kept playing football, but then I'd choose at like the age of 11 what am I going to choose to play. And I think my mum pushed me inside because she didn't have to do the washing. So like it was indoors and it was definitely not cold. I remember being in a final and I couldn't feel my toes and because it was so cold. And I remember saying to my mum, I cannot feel my toes. And it took me like half an hour. She was like,
playing an ice game?
it's just England. It was just yeah, so she's like, play basketball. But I'm pleased, and obviously you've seen my height, I'm not that tall, right? So I was a little point guard, and they used to call me Flash. So I used to be pretty quick and agile, but obviously, was not very tall. But yeah, I played, this is the academy, so I played all the way through. It was great for making friends and leadership as well. I was captains of teams, I represented the North East region, I had 2 England trials, and when I went, the England selectors were like, they said to my coach, why you bought these 2 tiny point guards? What have you done bringing this little white dude coming in who's like literally not going to grow more than 5'9"? So and then the next time he brought me again, he was like, no way near it. There was no way I was going to get there. The coach on my left is actually the England national coach at the minute, Mark Stuttle, and he's the men's team, the coach as well. But just looking at that, the guys you can see on the team, I was mixing with guys who were Eastern European, that Sam Agbo at the front from Nigeria, like different places, and that's like different cultures and and we would travel together. And I remember speaking to a Muslim friend, Bilu Khan, and he would tell me stories from the Quran, and I would tell him parables, and we'd compare them, and it was like a 4-hour journey. And as you look back, you think this is like all the cross cultural stuff. I was friends with these guys, and I was doing life with them. So I played basketball, and last season under 18s I snapped my ankle ligaments twice. So I did like a grade 2 thing. I wasn't ever going to make it, I don't think. There was one guy, that guy in the middle, Ross, actually got a contract. And he went to America for a little bit, but no one ever made it. So there's no money in British basketball. And because of that, I snapped my ankle ligaments at the age of under 18. I was thinking, what am I going to do? So I ended up moving to a gym. So instead I looked at what are my options now. Can't really play soccer or anything, so there was a big private gym over the road called David Lloyd, and it was like Europe's largest health and fitness provider. So I was like, how am I going to get into this place? Like, it's a multi-million-pound gym. Like, I want to work in here. I'm injured. My sport, I had to wear this metal detector, so I've still got a weakness in my ankle, so I can't really play as much as I wanted. But yeah, I went in there and I started as a lifeguard. So as a lifeguard, I remember I really wanted to work my way up. A kid had epileptic fit in the pool. I ended up having to jump in, and it was the scariest moment ever. And I ended up saying, the manager said, what can I do? You've literally jumped in and said, this kid, what is anything you do? I said, what, the gym? Can I work in the gym? And he was like, you're too young, no way. So I hand scrubbed all the tiles all the way around the pool. And he came down, he was like, who's ordered these new these new grills? We've spent loads of money. And the manager was like, I know, Ben sat there, and I scrubbed them all. So I was like, what I'll do in this pool, I'll scrub the gym, and I'll clean the gym for you. So he let me go into the gym. So I started, in the gym, and everyone was like, why is this young kid, in the gym? He doesn't have big muscles, what's he doing in the gym? But I started, just trying to do whatever I could. So they put me in charge of children's birthday parties. So I had to do superhero parties. That's why. Yeah, exactly. And the party line went because I implemented the football parties, and that was when I started coaching because it was the football parties. So I've got loads of superhero costumes. So Sandeep's like, why have you got Superman, Spider-Man, and Captain Jack Sparrow? What is this? That's long time ago.
I like dressing up.
Yeah, exactly. It is. That's it. Yeah. So that was that. But that was my start of my coaching. So I wanted to do my badges then. That was 12 years ago. And then I started doing this thing, a nutrition course. So I was doing anything I could possibly do to try and move up this company. And so we did this course. This is the Losing Shape, of course. And this guy, James, lost 10 stone. So 240 pounds, yeah, over a year. And he met a woman called Nicole. He got married. And it was like we had a competition in the whole of the David Lloyds, like 90 David Lloyds, and we started at 77th, and they ranked us for like percentage weight loss, total weight loss, and we managed to take Newcastle, me and this guy Chris, to number one in the whole company across all of Europe. And they were like, we were having all these courses, people were coming in, they were like making loads of money, and they were like, this is so great. And what did I do? Just made PowerPoints. Didn't bring in teams, didn't have teams at that point, but we put stuff in place for them to access food diaries and give them motivation and give them what they needed, the resources and training programs and all this kind of thing. And it's so funny. It's like Anyway, I went on sales mode, but yeah, that's a whole nother story. But the whole point this was like I was transforming people from the outside, like it was a physical thing. And as I was there, as a young man, you lose your identity a little bit. There's a woman there called Tracy, who's one of my heroes. And as I was there, you can imagine like the world opened up to you. You lost your identity. I worked like 177 days in a row. And this woman, Tracy, she was a Christian.
Which one are you pointing at?
This one.
The last one.
Liverpool fan. Tracy. On reception.
Come on, try.
Part-time.
That's right.
Yeah. And tells everyone about Jesus. Like, unashamedly, like, all the time. And so whenever you sign out, people were like, don't want to sign out because Tracy's going to tell me about God. And it was like she did a tannoy and people were like, it's the voice of God. And it was, it was amazing. But she would pray for people, like, it was a whole thing, but she'd see healing. Like, people got healed for, like, hamstrings were healed and stuff like that. It was incredible. But this woman, she was so intentional. And as I was kind of going in this stage as a young man, kind of was obviously 177 days in a row, wasn't being plugged into the local church. And she like met me where I was, and she was like, she wanted to, she would meet with me even as a woman. She'd met with me, start reading the Bible with us. She'd get me to memorize scripture. It'd be like Romans 3:23, all the sin and fall short of the glory of God. One a week, and she'd go through them every single week. And this woman was just so intentional. And she was like, I've never discipled a man before, but she was like, the Lord has put you on my heart. And is it okay if we meet and have coffee and, and read the word together? And she connected, like, again, like faith and sport. That she was a woman who really, like, intentionally did that. And in this company, if it wasn't for her, I may have not got out of it because they threw loads of things at me. I did a degree in sports management, and at the same time I was studying, it was there. And I went up and I became like the operations manager. So I was in charge of loads of the operations of the organisation. I was only 21 years old. And they were like saying, you can have a company car, we want you to do a regional role, all this kind of thing. And Tracy was like, I don't think this is for you. I don't think you should do this. And at the same time, I was telling her all the things that I felt like God was speaking to me. And I went to church on the 20th of January, and I'll never forget it. And Tracy told me, you need to stop working, 177 days. And it was that night that I met with the Lord. And I was dating this girl at the time who was a medical student, and she was taking a year out, a gap year. And she actually didn't get accepted to university for a year. And she was going to do an elective to India. And I don't know, I've never wanted to go to India before. And I was like in church, I couldn't stand, I couldn't even sing because the Holy Spirit was washing over us. And I remember going back home and I said, I'm going to India with you. She was like, oh, are you kidding? Like, there's no way you're going to India. Like, there's no way. Anyway, fast forward 6 months, we ended up breaking up, and I went to India by myself. And I literally hadn't planned any of it. So I ended up turning up to the Street Kids project, and I remember arriving in the airport, and they asked me where I'm staying. I didn't know the address because we broke up like a week before. So I wrote the Blue House on I didn't know where I was staying. All I knew was meeting some guy in Starbucks. I didn't know anything about the project, and that's when it was a Street Kids project. And it was that time was like a tornado season because it was like I said to you yesterday, they were teaching English and maths, and then I connected with them through sport. And the Lord was doing loads of stuff with my identity, who I was reading the Gospels. I was in a Hindu home, spent time with Muslims, went to visit Sikh temples, was exposed to all the different religions. And it was then that I realised in the Gospels, he's the way, the truth, and the life, and he's the one to follow. And when you know the truth will set you free. And it was in the midst of this chaos that I said yesterday about breaking my heart about sport. The only thing that will transform me is the gospel, and the only thing, that will, is worth sharing is that. So I ended up, basically coming back, finishing my degree, and there was a missionary in my home church, that church in Newcastle, who was in Malawi, and he was SIM missionary, a communication director, and he was the one who told me about Sports Friends. So the day after my last exam, got on a plane and I went overseas and to Malawi, and that was my first exposure to Sports Friends from there. And then we went on a journey. I was with one of my friends, Dan, and we, through Luke, got connected, and then heard about, for some reason, we ended up going to Thailand for 4 months, and we ended up staying in Jill's house. So Jill let 2 Geordies.
I had to say, Ben, after about the third night, I can't stay up talking anymore. I'm going to have to go to bed. I'm so exhausted. Because I had 2 of them. Not just Ben.
Yeah, no, he didn't talk as much as me.
He didn't. No, he didn't.
But yeah.
It was a good time.
Yeah, I was pleased that Jill let me stay in at home, and grateful for that. Yeah, so that was so through.
Well, from Luke,
through
from
Luke.
him having been with Luke and Becca,
Yeah.
and Ben wanting to do another Sports Friends trip somewhere. Like you said, I don't. You and Dan had picked Thailand, right?
I don't know how it happened, but yeah.
And so then it was, is there Sports Friends in Thailand?
Yeah. So just learn about everything, and
And then Dana abandoned you.
oh, that's a whole different story.
It's a whole other story.
You can't,
Watch
yeah.
out for him,
Yeah.
You've had
Yeah,
loads.
you got married, so yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's a whole different one. Anyway, so yeah, I did that, and then since obviously went back to Malawi 6 times and did for different lengths of period of time and stuff. So went back to England. I was like, after having that exposure, I was like, love to get trained up in the coaching, love to get trained up in the theology. So it was like, I want to do anything possible to get trained. So I went and did all my FA qualifications, level 1, level 2, level 3, Youth Bod Awards, all the way to my UEFA B. And then I was like, went to Nottingham, so the centre of Nottingham. I worked for the Church of England, which was an experience. That was where I was...
Definitely not Pentecostal.
Oh, well, there's a few of them. Yeah, and so that was when I, was with the bishops, making quiche for them and doing all kinds of things. I was a sports ambassador, so I did. There's there's 300 Anglican churches, and they were doing loads of different. It looked like loads of different things. Sports ministry wasn't really strategy, so like I said, I was making quiches for bishops, and then was doing like youth groups. Just the range was ridiculous. But it was an experience that helped me grow as a leader, and then I became a student minister of a church, so I had experience in local church, which again was interesting. And then I was like, I want to get more training, so I did a Christian sport internship, that was at the same time, and then went to Bible college in London. So I was desperate to get more training, and I didn't have any money. So I set up like a stewardship account, and from the north it's a little bit poorer. So I was like, what am I going to do? So basically asked loads of churches and individuals, and I wanted to go to this college, and I looked at different places, and I wanted to do a mission degree. And the only one, there were all nations I wanted to go to, but there wasn't a part-time option. So I looked, and the only one that was available was Oak Hill, which is in North London, which is a bit of a conservative college. And I was like one of like 3 people who did the mission degree. And everyone else was just, I'll show you a picture, was all like basically church leaders. And I was like one of the only few doing mission. And that's me. There's an assignment box here, so that's one of my costumes for the children's thing. And it was so serious. The place was like, they just sat around talking like all the time.
So you dressed up like that?
And put it in different ones, yeah. Just because they were just so serious. I can't explain how serious they were. Took themselves so seriously. And just, honestly, I was just like, come on, guys. Like, let's just smash through this stuff. And anyhow.
So you did a Superman.
Well, that was one of the things I did. There was a few things. But, yeah, I mean, it was so expensive to study. And I didn't have anywhere to stay. So, like, I would drive down at 4:40 in the morning on a Monday. And I'd drive down at 60 miles an hour to make sure it was optimal fuel. And then I didn't have money to stay. I was on like £160 a month to live off, right? It was insane. So the accommodation just on a Monday night was more than £40. That's my budget gone. So I had to camp in the grounds. So I got a pop-up tent from Argos, $9.99, and I camped in the ground. They got a huge ground, so let's make use of it. But apparently that was like strictly against the rules. But they never found me. But yeah.
Did you just keep moving each week?
Yeah, different locations. I looked at how the wind and everything and the slope, and yeah, I was in the forest.
In a bush.
Yeah, yeah.
So you drove there each week.
Monday morning
From Nottingham. It was kind of North London.
So like that, it's not that far,
Do
but
you have a picture of your tent?
I can find one. I got a video of like camping out and everything. So
So how long did you do that for?
2 years, yeah.
You camped out every week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There was different people that I stayed with.
Did
So
you get that lady took you in.
Yeah, so that was in the third year. That was,
Third year, okay,
I
so
mean, that's a
that's
whole different story. So, yeah, I mean, I stayed on people's garages, like, in London, I crashed on their floors, like, hoping they'd feed us. At lunchtime, I remember just, like, loading up on the food, because I didn't have money for food. And, like, I'd stay anywhere and everywhere just to make sure. And I drove back on Tuesday, got back crazy late, and then the next day I was up for, like, prayer breakfast on Wednesday morning, learning my Greek. And I just hated Greek. And I was just having to try and it was like a nightmare. And at the end of those 2 years, 3 years, I burnt out, like, horrendously, because I just couldn't keep that going. That's a whole different thing. But, yeah, I lived with a crazy woman the third year, like, who lived, a friend of a friend, and she was quite old, and she ended up locking the door at night, and I couldn't get in, so I had to climb up on the roof and knock on the window. And it turns out she had a gun. And she told me this, she said, be careful when you creep around at night, because I've got a gun. I was like, what am I going to do? Because I had to start working, so I went back and worked in Kensington, which is like a rich area. And I had to work till like 12 o'clock, so I worked like 32-hour weeks in terms of everything else. So I got back at 12 and I was like creeping around. Am I going to get shot by Christine, or what's going to happen?
This old lady in the
Yeah, it was nuts. She was QAnon supporter. She told me about QAnon, and she was like, "Don't speak to me with phones." And everything like that. It was nuts, but it was just what I wanted to do to access this theological stuff. I wanted, like, someone like me from Newcastle to go to that college. It's hard, like, to get it. Like, the whole culture, I felt like just being a northerner, being someone like mission, just being someone who doesn't. Yeah, it was a lot of differences, like cultural differences. But also rich, like, loads of ways as well. So a lot of these guys now support the work. They're now assistant ministers and, you know, now senior leaders and stuff as well. And I'm sure in the future these guys are going to give to, like, be partners of Sports Friends, because they already want to do that. Kat's brother was there as well.
Is he in
yeah,
that picture?
yeah. I don't think he's there. I think that was after he left.
Oh.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a crazy time. But I'm so glad. And I was working like 10 months. So I could go over to Malawi for like 2 months or 3 months at a time, and then come back and do it all again. And then, yeah, third year kind of massively burnt out. And when I was here, I went online and was praying for a spouse, and I didn't meet anyone at that college.
Maybe just as well.
Yeah, that's it. And that was when I met Sandy. So her parents live in, like, West London, and we met on Christian Connection. And it's like, we live now on this picture between London and Canterbury, so just like a little bit further down. So the Garden of England. So it's like 50-mile radius. She was like 49 miles in the radius, but as the crow flies, it's 49. But if you drive, it's 65. So I'm pleased she was included on it. But we met while I was there, and, like, I just massively, like, burnt out. So I met her, like, at the worst time possible. Like, I couldn't sleep. I had insomnia. Like, I had palpitations. I had the full shebang. Like, I couldn't even, dizziness. It was like, because of all that stuff that I did, I just wrote myself in the ground. Like, it was awful. But meeting her was at the point of, like, my physical, like, brokenness. And if I'd kept going, it was horrendously unsustainable. And I met her, and she's had to change my mindset on a lot of things. Don't sleep in tents, and, you know, actually look after yourself. And
Don't have 5 jobs or 5 things.
Exactly.
going on at
Just
once.
pick one and do that. And she's obviously massive.
So she
hero.
took you as a project. She's in healthcare, right?
Exactly. She was a pharmacy manager.
Now it's a clear picture. It's like,
Yeah, that's it. How did that happen? Yeah. So I was just like, yeah,
She's
she's
sorry for now we know.
exactly.
Now we know.
When did you meet?
So we met when I was at Bible college. So yeah, just so grateful for her. Like, she's, like, completely changed us in so many ways for the better. I've slowed down, believe it or not.
That dog.
I've got a. Here's the bit.
You have a place to sleep.
I've been amazing.
Sandy doesn't have a gun.
She ticked off.
That's it. So.
There's the dog.
Lovely Christmas one.
I know, there we go, on brand. Yeah. But yeah, her, like, heritage is her dad, she grew up in Kenya for 10 years. Her dad was in Uganda, and he was the first Sikh in his family to come to Christ. So, like, that story is just insane. Like, that testimony is ridiculous. But now he's 4 children and all following the Lord. And so she's Indian, African, but then is brought up in London after the age of 10 as well. who's married to Geordie. So we've got so many things going on.
She have a UK passport.
Yeah. She was born crazy born in UK, but then went back to Kenya straight
But
away.
her father is Kenyan.
He's got. They've all got UK passports, but he was born in Kenya. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But from both Indian descent parents.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Nairobi?
No, they were in Nakuru town. Yeah, Nakuru town.
Oh, so he was Indian descent. But
Yes.
born in Kenya.
So her grandparents
Okay.
were India, and then from India, like in Punjab way, and then they moved to Uganda and then Kenya, and then he was electrical rewinder. So what happened was he was in his office fixing things. He used to work with the British government and things like that, and all these different people. And there was a missionary, Assemblies of God missionary, went to meet him in his workplace. We built a relationship with him, and then basically invited him to church. And when he went forward, he prayed, and he felt like the scales fell from his eyes. He could see properly, and he started reading the word with him 1-to-1, and then disciple walked with him. When he was like, I mean, for him to do that, his family was like rejected, right, huge rejection. And then he got married to his wife, who was a Sikh, and on a wedding night, she had an asthma attack, and he prayed for it. She's never had asthma again, so she was healed instantly. And she gave her life to Christ, and then now all her brothers and sisters, one by one, and her brother recently, just before COVID, came to know Christ as well. So his whole family now walking with the Lord as well. So it's incredible, like, to see what God's done. But yeah, I mean, for me, that this was so mad that the India thing. Like, I went to India in 2013, fell in love with India, and I don't know if that was because of everything that happened, but. The India thing was there, went back to India with the Sports Friends guys 5 times, then I'd been to Malawi 5 times, and then I met Sandeep, and it was like India, Africa, in UK, like in one person. So she understands, she gets it. I understand a little bit about the different cultures. I'm learning all the time in that as well. But yeah, Sandeep, definitely one of my heroes. Not so much the dog, but I think I'm his hero maybe. So no, I'm not really. He doesn't like me much because I was his stepdad. So he's like, he doesn't really like me. He still doesn't respond to me and things like that. So you pray for that. No, don't pray for that. No, but Sandeep responds to me, so that's the main thing. So yeah, that's it. So yeah, so I think main things to pray for would be. Like, Sandeep's in a private hospital now and working as a pharmacy manager, she's like a superintendent, and we're hoping to go to Malawi in July. So there's this whole thing of like transition and laying that down and being like, we're going to stay where we are. Obviously starting this role 5 months ago, and there's just been so much change, and she's had to work through COVID. She was in community, so she's like feeling probably a little bit like I did when I met her, to be honest. So that's why we've just made sure, now trying to make sure she's in a good place. Holistically, so just really pray for her that she can rest, and just that would be my biggest prayer request. And then it's great the location, like where we are. We're involved in the local church running club and stuff like that, but also close to like Heathrow and Gatwick, so you can go places as well. So it is really good. So yeah, just pray for us as a family would be good. Local church stuff, and then in this new role would be great. So yeah, heritage, heroes. Oh, and the last thing I was going to share is Hand of God. So when I was playing tennis with my brother, I beat him and he got really angry. When I was in sixth form, he ended up throwing the racket and he stormed off. And this was just before sixth form. I remember sitting down on a bench, and I remember just sitting there and being like, oh, what am I going to do the rest of my life? And I sat there and I just closed my eyes, and I just wasn't really praying. But when I was there, I saw a black hand shaking a white hand, and I didn't think anything of it. And I just was playing tennis, and I forgot about it. And it was when I was in Thailand, we were praying in a camp, and I opened my eyes, and Ning was sat opposite, and I saw the badge, and it was that same thing, that image of the Akash in the white. And I was like, wow, I remember that when I played tennis. And so there's just all these little things, and I thought about it, you do see God's hand all the time, don't you, in your life? So, yeah, that's it. Thank you, guys.
Ted.
Oh, Ted!
Dead production.
Any questions?